Hey everyone, my name is Whoops, and I was fortunate enough to be invited to the Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail Media Tour. I had a blast getting to try a pre-release build and recorded some sweet footage for you guys to take a look at. Here you can see timestamps if you'd like to jump around, and there will be spoiler warnings for the new dungeon and zones. Before we hop into the job information, I must let y'all know that this is a pre-release build that has not undergone final adjustments. All content is subject to significant change. This video will contain a detailed look at all the new job adjustments, the new jobs, Viper and Pictomancer, a first look at the first Dawntrail MSQ dungeon, and some of the new zones. I really hope you all enjoy the video, and let's get started with the new job adjustments. So first thing that's important to see, because it affects a lot of jobs in the game, are these new action change settings. For a lot of existing and new actions, you'll be able to use this to combine or separate those actions, and even enable or disable an innate recast timer to prevent accidental double weaving or make double weaving even easier. For each job, we're going to take a brief look at all the changed things, new things, some removed things, and my general thoughts while past me struggles to quickly do a rotation for every single job in the short amount of time I had to record. We're going to go ahead and get started with my favorites, the melee DPS. Right off the bat, Feint now lasts 15 seconds instead of 10, and we got a potency increase on second wound. Yay! Dragoon is where we're going to get started, and this is what I was most excited about for the entire event, honestly. We've heard that Dragoon was up on the block for some significant gameplay adjustments, and now we finally get to see them. So, the first things we should talk about is the removal of Dragon Sight, and the new personal damage buff on Gear Skogul. Dragon Sight was removed, and presumably because of this, that damage buff, which was previously 10% to yourself and 5% to your selected partner, has now been attached to entering your life window with your new 60-second cooldown Gear Skogul, and is now just a 15% personal damage buff. So we don't need to accumulate eyes to enter our life windows anymore, and instead we just press our new 60-second cooldown Gear Skogul to enter life, give ourselves that 15% damage buff, and gain Nastrand ready, which allows us to cast 3 Nastrands just like before. However, instead of a 10-second recast timer on Nastrand, it is now just 2 seconds. And yes, this means you can fire off all 3 of your Nastrands between 3 GCDs. I actually forgot to mess with my action change settings here, so double weaving Gear Skogul and Nastrand was kind of clunky, but I'm like pretty sure if you disable that recast timer setting, it'll weave way easier than it looks in this clip. So you may be asking yourself, since we don't need to accumulate eyes anymore to enter our life windows, what do High Jump and Mirage Dive do? Well, they're now just purely potency. So we just press them on cooldown like we have before, but there's no life window tie-in to it anymore because they don't give eyes, and we don't need eyes. Next order of business, Spine Shatter Dive is now removed, but has been replaced with a new OGCD gap closer called Winged Glide. It does not deal damage and has 2 charges, which have 60-second charge times. So it's just like Spine Shatter, but it doesn't do any damage and has a totally different animation. Battle Litany's duration has been increased to 20 seconds from 15 seconds, presumably to match our other buff timers. Dragonfire Dive had a potency increase and now has a new follow-up action, Rise of the Dragon, which is an OGCD you unlock at level 92. Stardiver also now has a new follow-up action, Star Cross, which is again an OGCD, but you unlock this one at level 100. Both of these new follow-up actions on Dragonfire and Stardiver feel super snappy. They were great to press, and I could move around while doing them even. There were a few minor adjustments to our weapon skill combo. Our 5-part weapon skill combo has received a new static 5th hit. So instead of alternating between Wheeling Thrust and Fang and Claw, we will now always press Drake's Bane on our 5th weapon skill. This is not a positional, and it will automatically replace your next 5th hit, so it's not something you need to add to your bar. Disembowel and Vorpal Thrust have both received new upgraded versions, finally, with some new fancy animations and slight potency increases. And finally, I am so sorry to announce this, but Life Surge still exists, and it's the exact same.
Why?
We also did not receive the actual personal defensive I've been praying for. Oh well. Anything else about Dragoon that I didn't mention is more or less the same. So, my overall impressions of the new Dragoon? I love it. Being able to have a life window in our opener is massive, like huge massive. As much as I like managing my eyes to enter life, I'm a fan of the new Gear Skogul and how easy it is to manage your timings for burst windows. I love the recast time change for Nastrand. I think it'll be super fun to shoot those 3 Nastrands out super fast if I want to. I'm a big fan of the new follow-ups to Dragonfire and Stardiver. They feel and look amazing. I really like the introduction of a positional free 5th hit to give us a bit more movement flexibility without eating up as many True North charges. The loss of Spine Shatter isn't really the end of the world for me. In fact, I kind of welcome it. I think the job has been polished up quite nicely and will still be in a great spot, and I'm really looking forward to see how they expand upon the job in the future. Although I gotta be honest, I'm a little mad about not having a real personal defensive action yet. Life Surge just doesn't cut it like the other melee defensives. Anyways, moving on to one of the new kids on the block, Viper. So Viper is awesome. It's fast, potent, and surprisingly simple to learn. If you take a look at the actions menu, you may get a bit overwhelmed, but trust me when I say it is really simple and streamlined to play. You have 2 single target combos. One uses your dual blades, and the other uses your combined twin blade. You also have 2 area of effect combos. And again, one uses your dual blades and the other uses your combined twin blade. Within these combos are 2 important personal buffs and 1 important debuff to your target. Let's start with your personal buffs. Hunter's Instinct, which increases your damage dealt, and Swift Scaled, which reduces your weapon skill cast time, recast times, and auto attack delay. To put it simply, a damage buff and a haste buff. These buffs are acquired by pressing your second GCD in your weapon skill combos. Since there are 2 paths for each combo, one gives you the damage buff and the other gives you your haste buff. To make this even more simple to understand, if the action name contains Hunters, it will grant you the damage buff. If the action name contains Swift, it will grant you the haste buff. The goal is to have these 2 buffs active at all times, and this is really easy to do by simply doing your weapon skill combos in order. Literally just press what lights up. You can also see what you need via the job gauge, but for real, you can just press what lights up and you'll get the buffs you need. Next important thing I mentioned is that one important debuff on your target. This is called Noxious Gnash. Targets with the Noxious Gnash debuff will take more damage from the player that applied said debuff, aka you. So you as a Viper won't deal that bonus damage if a different Viper player applies their own Noxious Gnash, and vice versa. You have to apply it yourself to deal that bonus damage. If you are familiar with Reaper's death design, this is very similar. You will want to apply Noxious Gnash to your target or targets, then keep it on your target or targets by using actions that apply or extend the duration. You can do this really easily by using actions with the word dread in their names. All of those actions are the first action in their respective combos. Your dual blades combos are always available to use, but your twin blade combos are on a 40-second charge timer with a maximum of 2 charges. While both versions, twin blade and dual blades, give the same amount of gauge and also apply the same buffs and debuffs, your twin blade combos deal more potency, have a slower GCD, and give you 1 rattling coil. Rattling coils are the red diamonds on your job gauge. These diamonds are expended to use your Uncoiled Fury GCD, which is an uncomboed 20 Yalm range attack that does a bunch of damage and is an AoE at your target. If you're wondering, Viper does have a few positionals. The dual blades combos finish with a positional. These are easy to tell because their actions either have flank or hind in their names. Whenever you do one of these dual blades positionals, you'll get a buff to the opposite positional, essentially having you alternate between flank and hind for the combo finishers. The twin blade combos, on the other hand, just have a positional on the second and third parts, which can be pressed in either order. Now that you understand the differences between the dual blades and twin blade combos, it's important to mention these combos have OGCD actions that you need to press at different points during their respective combos. Don't worry, it's really as simple as, when they light up, push them, but I'll explain further. The OGCDs are on assignable hotbar actions: Serpent's Tail, Twin Fang, and Twin Blood. As you might have guessed, Serpent's Tail is used to weave an OGCD into your dual blades combo, and Twin Fang as well as Twin Blood are used to weave 2 OGCDs into your twin blade combos. Twin Blade and Twin Blood are also used to weave a similar 2 OGCDs after your Uncoiled Fury GCD. You can see on screen now the exact timings for each of these OGCDs. As you can see, weaving the 2 OGCDs in your Twin Blade combo is easy because your GCD is way longer. Finally, we need to talk about your burst phase, which is entered by using Reawaken. You can press the GCD Reawaken once you have 50 gauge. This deals a large amount of potency in an AoE around you and allows the usage of 5 powerful GCD actions. You simply press them in order: 1st generation, 2nd generation, 3rd generation, 4th generation, and finally Ouroboros. Each generation GCD action has a follow-up OGCD to press immediately after it. You'll do this for all 4 generations and then simply finish with Ouroboros. All these actions in Reawaken deal a lot of potency in an AoE around your target. Also, kind of a no-brainer, but since this is a combo chain, pressing the generation GCDs in order will increase the potency of this combo, so make sure you do that. You also have a 2-minute cooldown ability called Serpent's Ire, which grants you 1 rattling coil, the diamonds on your job gauge, and 1 free usage of Reawaken, no 50 gauge required. Some of you smart cookies out there may have just realized how simple this job really is, and yes, you are correct. The summary is just acquire and maintain your 3 buffs/debuffs, spend your rattling coils and do not overcap them, build your gauge up to use reawaken during your burst windows, and that's it. Viper also has a slick little gap closer which can be used on an enemy or party member. It also has an uncomboed free ranged GCD in case you need to disconnect, and it does not have a personal defensive cooldown. That's it. I think this job is a ton of fun. It's super satisfying and just the right amount of simple yet rewarding. I would highly recommend checking this job out even if you're not a melee player, because it's super cool. Next up, let's talk about Monk. So Monk got a relatively surprising update. We've seen many variations of Monk over the years, and we are now met with basically a new Monk again. And I actually really like this one. So the summary is your damage buff from Twin Snakes is gone, your damage over time from Demolish is also gone, but now we have a new mechanic in the way of Fury stacks. As you can see, you now need to gain and expend Fury stacks by performing the correct GCDs. Boot Shine, True Strike, and Snap Punch have all 3 been given direct upgrades to Leaping Oppo, Rising Raptor, and Pouncing Coral respectively. And to use these GCDs to their fullest potency, you must have a corresponding Fury stack. You are limited to having at any given point a maximum of 1 Oppo's Fury, 2 Raptor's Fury, and 3 Coral's Fury. You gain these Fury stacks by pressing Dragon Kick, Twin Snakes, and Demolish respectively. You then spend them on doing Enhanced Leaping Oppo, Rising Raptor, and Pouncing Coral GCDs like I mentioned before. If you're wondering, Leaden Fist is now gone as well. All you need to do is manage your Fury stacks and perform the correct form GCDs in order like we have in the past. Elixir Field has now received a new coat of paint at level 92 and is now called Elixir Burst. Also, each Riddle ability you have now applies a buff called Rumination. So that's Riddle of Earth, Wind, and Fire applying Earth's, Wind's, and Fire's Ruminations, respectively. These Rumination buffs allow you to execute new actions. Earth's Reply is an OGCD which heals party members around you in an AoE. This heal is increased if you take damage while Riddle of Earth is active. Wind's Reply is a GCD line AoE that deals big damage to all enemies in front of you. Fire's Reply is a ranged GCD as well, which deals big damage to your target and in an AoE around your target. Brotherhood now allows your chakra to overcap to a total of 10 chakra, and it still only costs 5 chakra to use Forbidden Chakra. Also, Six-Sided Star got a huge potency buff, and it also expends any chakra you have saved up and deals bonus potency per chakra used. I try not to pay too much attention to potencies during media tours, but I cannot help but look at how much potency this GCD does now and just go, wow. For my number nerds out there, I'll just say that they did also increase the potency on Forbidden Chakra to make it even, but still, it's kind of crazy. Anyways, that's the Monk changes. Personally, I'm a fan. I think Monk is now super accessible and simple, and I really like that. I'm excited to punch and kick. Next up, let's check out Samurai. So Samurai is largely the same. It got a few quality of life adjustments and some upgrades. First things first, you no longer have Tsubame charges. Kind of. Now the way that it works is that every time you use Meikyo, you get a usage of Tsubame. It basically ties the 2 abilities together so you don't have to manage them separately anymore. Higenbana is no longer repeatable with Tsubame, RIP, even though it was useless, I loved it because it was funny. At level 100, Meikyo now grants you 1 Tendo per usage. This Tendo buff allows the execution of an enhanced Midare or an enhanced Tenka Goken. These are renamed to Tendo Setsugeka and Tendo Goken, and they look super cool. Iki Shoten still gives Oginami Kiri ready and 50 gauge, but now also gives you Zanshin ready. Zanshin is a new OGCD that conveniently costs 50 gauge and deals big damage in a cone in front of you. Guren and Sene now have a 60-second cooldown via a trait at level 94, and just FYI, this is coming down from what was previously a 120-second cooldown, so this is kind of nuts. Shoha got the change that basically everyone was expecting. They combined the single target and AoE Shoha buttons into a singular Shoha button, and now it's just a line AoE OGCD that deals big damage to the first target and slightly less for each target onwards. Third Eye now gets a direct upgrade at level 82 actually. It still gives you gauge when hit, but it now also gives you a delayed personal heal. It is now called Tengetsu. Hakaze, aka your first button in your single target rotation, gets a direct upgrade. Fancy. And in case you are wondering, Hagakure and Meditate still exist and function the same. Nothing too drastic here. Feels like the job just got cleaned up a bit and got a little more flair. Looks super great, and also side note, the artifact gear looks super cool. We're moving on. It's time to take a peek at Ninja. Right off the bat, the Huton gauge is now gone. You'll no longer need to maintain your timed gauge with Huton, Hurricane, or Armor Crush. Instead, we now have a trait for haste like Huton used to provide. Instead of the old Huton gauge, we now have Kazematoi, which are the little kunai on the job gauge. Every time you press Armor Crush as a comboed action, you receive 2 of these Kazematoi. These, simply enough, just increase the potency of comboed Aeolian edges. So just make sure you always have some of these Kazematoi and spend them on your Aeolian edges. Mug now receives an upgrade at level 66 and is changed to Dokumori. This deals increased potency as well as the increased damage taken buff. At level 96, Dokumori receives a trait upgrade which gives you a stack of Higi when used. Higi can be used to enhance one Bavakakra or Hellfrog. The enhanced Bava becomes Zesho Meppo, which is an awesome spinny attack OGCD. And the enhanced Hellfrog is just an even bigger frog that shoots flames. In my rush state of recording at the media tour, past whoops forgot to record this ability or even hover over the job action. I am so sorry. But like, we can probably assume it's just a higher potency AoE, right? Sorry. Anyways, Trick Attack gets a direct upgrade at level 92. It becomes Kunai's Bane. This is literally just an AoE Trick Attack. It does slightly more potency with fall-off damage to additional targets and applies the same 10% increased damage taken from the ninja that applied it to all targets hit. And obviously does not require a positional anymore. This is awesome, period, slay. Tenchi Jin now grants Tenri Jindo Ready at level 100 via a trait, which allows the execution of the OGCD Tenri Jindo, which appears to be a big AoE attack on your target. However, again, Passwhoops fumbled and forgot to hover over the job action here, teehee. Some of you may be wondering, since the Huton gauge is gone, what does the Huton Mudra do now? Well, luckily for you, I accidentally hovered over it for literally 1 frame, and Jill is the best editor ever, so here you go. It is now essentially an AoE Suiton. It deals AoE damage on your target with no fall off, and grants you the Shadow Walker buff, which allows the usage of Trick Attack, which is now called Kunai's Bane. As you can see, Ninja still very much cooks. It's super fun and literally just got better. I am personally very excited to play some Ninja in Dawntrail. Alright, last one for the melees, here comes Reaper. So, like the last 2 melees, Reaper is still mostly the same, but got some cool upgrades and quality of life. Right away, Harp and Harvest Moon, your ranged GCDs, now give you 10 soul gauge instead of nothing, so you aren't punished as bad for disconnecting from your targets. Gluttony now gives you a special buff at level 96 called Executioner. This allows for the usage of enhanced Gibbet, Gallows, and Guillotine. Obviously, you just get to do 2 of these since Gluttony gives you 2 Soul Reaver stacks, but those 2 will be super enhanced and awesome looking. These new versions are simply called Executioner's Gibbet, Gallows, or Guillotine, and will do increased potency over a normal version. At level 92, Enshroud will now also grant Oblatio, which will allow you to execute Sacrificium. Simply put, once you Enshroud, your Gluttony keybind becomes a free OGCD that you can squeeze into your Enshroud window. It does big AoE damage with some fall off. At level 100, Plentiful Harvest will now grant you Perfectio Occulta. The tooltips describe exactly how this works, but honestly, simply put, it just makes your next Communio grant a follow-up Super Communio called Perfectio, which is an instant cast GCD that does big AoE damage. Also worth mentioning, instead of Plentiful Harvest giving you 50 gauge to Enshroud, it will now grant you a personal buff that lets you Enshroud once for free. This will be super good to prevent overcapping. And that's it for Reaper. Like I said, pretty simple upgrades and quality of life. This will probably still be my pocket pick after Dragoon, honestly. I'm excited to rip some more Communios during raid. Okay, next up is our blue friends, the tanks. Jill will handle this section. Take it away.
Hey, it's Jill time, editor and resident tank mate. First things first, some changes for all tanks across the board. Rampart now increases HP recovery from actions by 15% for the whole duration. Reprisal now lasts 15 seconds instead of 10 seconds. And all tanks received a buff to their 2-minute mitigation. They're all up from 30% to 40% mitigation, and each job has a unique extra bonus. Now it's time for editor bias, which means we start with Dark Knight. Good news, Dark Knight mains, they didn't mess with TBN. Still 15 seconds, still costs mana. They also didn't mess with Dark Might either, so basically this is just the best tank in the game still. Shadow Wall's upgrade is Shadowed Vigil, 40% with a fat heal at the end of the duration. Instead of having Blood Weapon and Delirium, Blood Weapon now upgrades into Delirium, combining the 2 effects into one button, and at level 96, Delirium allows us to execute a special 3-part combo instead of your 3 free Blood Spillers. This combo is Scarlet Delirium, Comeuppance, and Torque Cleaver. We also have Impalement, which is our AoE version. These all just deal more potency. Bro. Probably. Plunge has also been replaced with Shadow Stride. It's an OGCD, 30-second cooldown, 2 charges, but no potency this time. Unmend still decreases the recast of this gap close as normal. Living Shadow also got changed to no longer require gauge, so now we're saving even more gauge for Blood Spillers. And from Living Shadow, we get a buff called Scorn, which allows us to cast Disesteem, a high potency GCD. I know I was worried about them saying that they condensed 2 buttons into 1 button, and then directly afterwards they said they're adding another button to the burst phase, but we're fine. Overall, it's less weaving because we're not weaving plunges into our burst window now. Dark Knight is looking just as strong as it's been for a good few expansions now. Very happy. Hello warrior mains. You love pressing Ffxiv, but do you wish you could weave a Ffxiv in between your Ffxivs? When spending all 3 Ffxivs in a release, you become Wrathful, and that allows you to press Primal Wrath, a fat AoE OGCD. You also got access to a follow-up to Primal Rend called Primal Ruination, which is an even fatter, guaranteed crit direct hit GCD. Warrior's 2-minute mitt is called the Damnation. 40% mid, same retaliation potency as Vengeance, with an added regen when the mid expires. You know, in case Nascent and Equilibrium weren't enough. Also, in the Chaos got a little animation update. That's it. Yup, it's just more Warrior. You know what you wanted. Square Enix knows what you want. You got even more of it. Enjoy being the most angry and unkillable job in the game. Paladin essentially got extensions to the rework that had already got in Endwalker. Blade of Valor, the final Confidio combo hit, now grants Blade of Honor, an OGCD you can press at any time after your blade combo. Atonement is now a combo rather than pressing the same button 3 times in a row. The actions are Atonement, Supplication, and Sepulture. It seems like you get this early on in the levels. I don't know because Whoops didn't hover over them, but there are traits earlier than level 90 that specifically refer to these actions, so that's what I'm assuming. Paladin also got an upgrade to Requiescat called Imperator, just does more damage and it's got some AoE tacked onto it now. Additionally, Vital Flight now grants Goring Blade Ready, which doesn't really change a whole lot other than making it obvious to new players they should press the big damage thing inside the big damage buff. Sentinel's upgrade is Guardian, a 40% mid with a fat shield tacked onto it. There's been no other changes to Paladin's mid, which means the Paladin still does its job extremely well and will continue to in Dawntrail from the looks of it. Gunbreaker also didn't change a whole lot. Like Paladin, No Mercy now grants Ready to Break, which allows you to execute Sonic Break, a button you were already pressing in No Mercy anyway, right? Like Dark Knight, Rough Divide's gone and replaced with Trajectory, a nil potency gap close with the same recast and charges. Fated Circle got continuation called Fated Brand, no surprise there. And Gunbreaker's big level 100 move is the Reign of Beasts combo, consisting of Reign of Beasts, Noble Blood, and Lionheart. Yo, Squall reference? You get this for free upon executing Bloodfest, and it essentially means you don't really need to save cartridges for 2-minute buffs anymore, because this combo is essentially going to replace any burst strikes you were putting into No Mercy. And trust me, you will be replacing burst strikes with this combo. As always, final potency values is subject to change, but as of the media tour, the final hit of this combo is the same potency as a double down. Finally, Nebula becomes Great Nebula, 3% mid, with a 20% maximum HP buff that also heals you for the HP gain. Crazy mid. Gunbreaker is the job that actually got me into this game, so I'm kind of happy that it stayed the same. It still kicks ass. It still looks really cool. It's just more Gunbreaker. Overall, tanks looking like they're in a great place. The mid upgrade should make everyone a force to be reckoned with in dungeons, and the implications of some of these mid changes are terrifying for future raids. I am hoping and praying that we get some of the most messed up tank busters we've ever seen. That's it. Back to Whoops.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to the healers. To start us off, all healers received a reduction to Swift Cast's cooldown, which is now 40 seconds, an upgrade to each healer's GCD AoE heal action, and a trait that increases damage dealt. Let's go ahead and check out Astrologian and its highly anticipated adjustments. So, I think the main question many people had when the Astra rework was confirmed was, what's going to happen to the cards, and is draw going to get changed? We'll go ahead and start with that. So, draw has been changed to Astral and Umbral draw. Instead of drawing singular cards one at a time like we used to, we will now draw 3 cards and either Lord or Lady. So, 4 cards. Astral and Umbral draw each have their own static set of cards, which you are dealt when you press the action. Astral draw will always give you the Balance, the Arrow, the Spire, and Lord of Crowns. These cards can be played by using their respective play action. Play 1, 2, or 3. And past that, will provide one of your party members a buff when used on them, just like before. The Balance provides a 6% damage buff when used on a melee or tank, and 3% to anyone else. The arrow will provide a 10% healing received increase for a short time. The spire will provide a shield. And lastly, for Astral Draw, Lord of Crowns, which now deals increased potency at the same range. Moving on to your Umbral Draw, these work the same way with the same respective play actions, 1, 2, or 3. The Spear is also a 6% damage buff, but this time to a ranged or healer, 3% to anyone else. The Bowl is a 10% mitigation card, and the Ewer is a 15-second regen. Lastly, you'll get Lady of Crowns, which is the same that we're used to. You will always start an encounter with Astral Draw, and once used, it will be replaced by Umbral Draw on a 60-second cooldown. Then later, when you use that Umbral Draw, it swaps back to Astral Draw again on that 60-second cooldown, and the cycle will repeat. Both of these draws will give you mana, just like Draw currently does. As you can see, seals aren't a thing anymore, and thus Astrodyne was removed. At level 92, using Divination will now grant you Divining. Divining allows you to use Oracle, which is a new damage AoE OGCD with no falloff. At level 100, using Neutral Sect will now grant you Sun Touched, and Sun Touched will allow you to use Sun Sign. Sun Sign is an OGCD party-wide 10% damage mitigation for 15 seconds. I love this ability. Your Aspected Helios has received an upgrade at level 96, which turns it into Helios Conjunction. It's basically just a more potent version. You gain a third Essential Dignity charge at level 98, and it's probably worth mentioning since they didn't use it in the job trailer. Yes, Earthly Star is still there, and it functions the same. Nice. That's it for the Astro changes. I love these changes, and I'll probably be playing a lot more Astro now because of them. So now, let's see the Scholar changes. Succor has received an upgrade. It changes into Consultation, and this is basically just a more potent version. Your Recitation has been reduced to 60 seconds from 90 seconds. This is massive. Chain Stratagem now has a follow-up OGCD action, which is a huge dot on your target and all targets nearby it. We can now stop getting so mad at our fairy and literally just do it ourselves. Seraphism transforms you into an altered state with increased healing benefits. It's on a 180-second cooldown and gives a giant raid-wide regen. This state will persist for 20 seconds. While in Seraphism, Consultation, which we now know as Succor, becomes an instant cast version with even more potency. This is called a Session. Your Adlo will also get upgraded similarly to Manifestation. Also, while in Seraphism, your Emergency Tactics cooldown becomes 1 second. Yes, really. Everything else is more or less the same for Scholar, so yeah, huge win. I'm really liking Seraphism. It'll be great for when I'm absolutely panicking to save my party. Moving right along, let's check out White Mage. At level 96, Medica 2 has been upgraded to a shocking Medica 3. It looks super pretty and does more healing. Hooray! Presence of Mind still functions the exact same way, but at level 92, it receives an additional effect. Now, once used, it will allow you to cast a total of 3 Glare 4s. These are high damage, instant cast AoE GCDs. At level 98, Tetra has gained an additional charge, so now you have 2. White Mage also received a brand new gap closer called Ethereal Shift. This is on a 60-second cooldown and will send you 15 yalms forward. It doesn't need a target. If you're familiar with Dancer's En Avant, this functions basically the same way. Also, Ethereal Shift is learned at just level 40. Sweet! Temperance at level 100 now allows you to cast a follow-up OGCD called Divine Caress. Straight up, this button is crazy good. It's a gigantic party-wide shield, then once that shield breaks, grants a health regen. White Mage got some pretty straightforward upgrades, and I'm really liking them too. Finally, for the healers, let's talk about Sage. First off, at level 92, we have a new OGCD AoE damage button on a 60-second cooldown. This is called Psyche. A new action at level 100 has essentially given us a temporary party-wide Cardia. This is called Philosophia. Philosophia applies Eudaimonia and increases healing potency by 20%. Eudaimonia is basically just Cardia, but it gets applied to your whole party at once. So every time you use a GCD damage ability, everybody will get a heal. Eudaimonia, more like you die less. Yeah. Anyways, this is on a 180-second cooldown. Eucrasian Prognosis, your augmented AoE heal, the shield version, has received an upgrade at level 96. It is now Eucrasian Prognosis 2. It's just a more potent version. Now, here's the most interesting addition for me, and it's kind of for a weird reason. So you can now augment your AoE damage ability, Dyscrasia. It becomes Eucrasian Dyscrasia, which applies a unique damage over time to all nearby targets. Oddly enough, this stacks with your single target dot. With how the potencies were in the Media Tour build, I believe it's actually worth it to maintain both of these dots, even in a single target fight, which is kind of cool, or could be difficult sometimes because the AoE dot only applies to the target directly next to your character. So like, do you see where this is going? Healer positioning will get funny sometimes, and this should be awesome to deal with. Anyways, Soteria has a reduced cooldown of 60 seconds now at level 94, and PHYS has a longer duration of 15 seconds at level 98. That's it for new Sage stuff. Please let me know what you guys think of the dot stacking. I think it's actually so interesting. I absolutely adore Sage, and it is for sure still my favorite and go-to healer. Next up, we're going to check out the casters. We'll start off with Black Mage, and lucky for us, we have an absolute Black Mage nerd here. So Jill will talk to you all about that. But real quick, all the casters got a trait upgrade, which makes their addles last for 15 seconds, and their swift casts got reduced down to 40 seconds. Go ahead, Jill.
Black Mage. Oh boy. The core of Black Mage hasn't changed that much, but if you're new to this job, there's been a good few streamlining changes, and if you're a nerd about this job like I am, there's a lot to unpack. Let's go over the new stuff first. The new job gauge is for stacks of Astral Soul, counterpart to Umbral Soul. Casting Fire 4 will net you 1 stack, casting Flare for AoE will net you 3. At 6 Astral Souls, you can cast Flare Star. This is essentially a second Despair with equal cast time but more potency, no mana cost, and can be cast after your AoE rotation. If you're new to Black Mage, this may not look like a lot of potency, but remember it's multiplied by 80% due to Astral Fire 3, as well as by your Enochian buff, which is now 30% as of level 96. We also got the new ability Retrace, allowing us to reposition our ley lines. We can only do this once per use, but we still have between the lines available if we need to move out of them again. We also got upgrades to Thunder in the form of High Thunder and High Thunder 4. Just does more damage. The nerds in the class will notice that it has some upfront potency now. I'll get to that later. Also, we get an extra polyglot stack. Now, a lot of Black Mage's big question was, what's the deal with Umbral Ice mana regen now? As of Media Tour, mana still technically regenerates as normal in Umbral Ice, but it's actual normal, as in other jobs as normal, and not the huge mana ticks we're used to. Every time you cast an ice spell, you gain a chunk of mana, based on what level of Umbral Ice you have. At 1, that's 2500. At 2, 5000, and at 3, 10,000. Umbral Soul has also been updated to reflect this. This means that a single cast of Blizzard 4 will refill your entire mana bar. I would say the same for Paradox, but Ice Paradox is gone now. You only get Paradox from transitioning from Ice Phase to Fire Phase. Fire Paradox is instant cast, as many people noticed in the job trailer, and it gives a guaranteed proc of Fire Starter, and you will essentially have 2 free insta-casts in Astral Fire always, which makes it real easier to use Mana Font. Hey, remember how Mana Font currently gives 3000 mana? Well, now it gives 10,000 mana, and Astral Fire 3, and Paradox, and a Thunder proc, and 3 Umbral Hearts, because why not? The final under the hood change is that Sharpcast is gone. Thundercloud procs as we currently know them are gone, along with the Thunder potency, as well as Firestar procs once you're at level 90. Instead, transitioning to either Elemental Phase, Fire or Ice grants Thunderhead, which allows you to cast Thunder. It is instant every time. And that's it. Some of these changes have definitely helped make Black Mage easier to understand and a little more forgiving. It also removes the weird situations where at faster spell speeds, you would get the absolute worst mana ticks and not get enough mana during ley lines. I will say, I will miss Ice Paradox a lot. It was a really cool button, allowed for a lot of cool non-standard stuff, but it is still Black Mage. It's more forgiving now, but it is still very much Black Mage. It's still a cool rotation, and wow, you get to cast a lot of fire. Alright, back to whoops with Pictomancer.
Thanks, Jill. All right, let's check out Pictomancer. So this job has quite a lot of moving parts. It feels like there's a lot to keep track of, so if you like complex jobs, this might be the one for you. I think once you understand the basic ideas, really anyone will be able to master this job with enough practice. You're rewarded heavily for playing this job effectively. It does a bunch of damage, has a raid-wide damage buff, a gap closer, and even party-wide healing and shielding. The only thing it doesn't have is a raise, but there's a lot to make up for that. Let's start breaking the rotation down. First things first, let's talk about the palette gauge. You build your palette gauge by casting your light paint combo, which goes in the order fire in red, arrow in green, and water in blue. Don't worry, this is all on one button. Put fire in red on your hotbar and that's it. Casting fire in red will give you Aether Hues, and all this does is it changes the fire in red button into the next spell that you need. The AoE rotation is exactly the same. It just has 2 at the end of the name. This is your bread and butter combo for when you have nothing else to do. Completing the combo will give you 25 palette gauge and 1 white paint, which you keep track of here. You can spend white paint on Holy and White, a higher potency instant cast GCD with a built-in AoE. However, don't spend them all immediately. You'll see why. So you can keep a maximum of 100 pallet gauge, and you can spend 50 of it on an OGCD called Subtractive Pallet. This ability does two things. First, it gives you 3 stacks of Subtractive Pallet. This allows you to cast your Dark Paint combo, the twisted evil version of your Light Paint combo, that has a longer cast time, but does more damage. It works the exact same way as your Light Paint combo, but this time it goes Blizzard in Cyan, Stone in Yellow, and Thunder in Magenta. Your pallet gauge will also turn a different color so that you know which combo you should be pressing without staring at your hotbar. The second effect of Subtractive Palette is it converts one white paint that you have saved into a black paint. This is why we want to save some white paint we have. Black paint can be spent on Comet in Black, which is an instant cast like Holy in White, but it does more damage. Holy and Comet have 2 separate buttons, so you can spend either of them freely. So all that is essentially its own self-contained rotation, but we're not done yet. This is just what you're doing when you're not painting. Let's go over the canvases. In order to paint, you have to first apply a motif. A motif is a very long cast GCD that does not actually do any damage, but it puts a sketch on one of your canvases. This is either the creature canvas, the weapon canvas, or the landscape canvas. Once you have something on a canvas, you can spend the corresponding Muse OGCD to bring the painting to life. Each motif and Muse is slightly different, so let's go over them one at a time. The creature motif action on your hotbar cycles between different creatures in the same order every time. Once you paint a creature motif, the Living Muse action changes depending on what creature you painted. You can hold up to 3 stacks of Living Muse at a time on a 40-second cooldown. The first 2 motifs you'll paint are Palm and Wings. Don't be fooled by the cast times on screen, they're only this fast out of combat. The Muses are very high potency AoE OGCDs. Using a Muse action saves it up on this little bar above your creature canvas. Now, what has wings and a palm? Yup, a Moogle. Bringing your Palm and Wings Muses to life allows you to cast Mog of the Ages, another high potency AoE OGCD. After that, you can paint a Claw motif, which lets you cast Clawed Muse. And finally, you can paint a Fang motif, which, you guessed it, lets you cast Fanged Muse. All the creature muses do the same potency. That's all 4 creature motifs, and once they're all brought to life, you get to cast Retribution of the Medine. This replaces Mog of the Ages on your hotbar, and is just a higher potency version of it. And that's all the creature muses. The next canvases are way easier to explain. The weapon canvas is next. For some reason, the only weapon a Pictomancer can possibly imagine is a giant hammer. It's the same deal as before, paint the weapon motif and bring it to life with the Steel Muse OGCD. This time, the Muse itself doesn't deal damage, but it allows you to cast Hammer Stamp, an instant GCD spell. These are guaranteed crit direct hits, and at level 86, combos into Hammer Brush and Polishing Hammer, which do increased potency. You get 2 charges of Steel Muse, and they're on a 60-second cooldown. And for our third and final canvas, we have the Landscape canvas. Same deal, paint the landscape motif and bring it to life with the Scenic Muse. This is your big 2-minute cooldown, no charges, and it grants a bunch of stuff all at once. A 5% party-wide damage buff for 20 seconds, Subtractive Spectrum, which gives you a free cast of Subtractive Palette without needing the 50 gauge, Inspiration, and 5 stacks of Hyperphantasia. Hyperphantasia is consumed when casting spells that are affected by it. It'll tell you in the tooltip for each spell here. You'll notice that painting the landscape leaves this lovely scene on the ground. Staying in this circle while having stacks of Hyperphantasia speeds up cast and recast times for spells significantly. But watch out, you can still consume stacks while casting outside of the circle, but you won't get the haste buff. Consuming all stacks of Hyperphantasia grants Rainbow Bright, which you can spend to cast a spell called Rainbow Drip instantly. You can technically cast Rainbow Drip whenever you want, but without Rainbow Bright, it has a really long cast time. And the last thing that Scenic Muse will give you is Starstruck, which allows you to cast Star Prism, another high potency instant cast GCD. This time with an inbuilt raid-wide heal for all party members around your target. And that's all the canvases. As the final little touch to this job, it also has a gap close called Smudge, which doesn't have stacks, but it's on a 20-second cooldown. It's a dash forward like Onavant, and it also increases your movement speed for 5 seconds. You also have Tempera Coat, a 2-minute cooldown self-shield for 10 seconds. And at level 88, you can choose to use Tempera Grassa, which halves the potency of the shield, but it applies to you and your entire party instead. And if the shield is absorbed, it reduces the cooldown of Tempera Coat by 30 seconds. Whew. That's a lot, huh? I really wish I had some more time on the day of the media tour to mess around with Picto and do some content with it, because it's actually super interesting. Managing your canvases and preparing for your big burst windows is a ton of fun, and probably feels super satisfying to pull off correctly. I can't wait to give this job some more attention once Dawntrail drops. Now it's time for Red Mage. So, Manification gets a new effect at level 100. Using all 6 Manification stacks will grant you Cineration Ready, which, you guessed it, allows for the execution of Cineration, a new AoE OGCD damage button with some falloff. Basically, it's just press Manification, do your melee combo, your 3 spells afterwards. That's all 6 of your Manification stacks, and now you'll be able to press Cineration. Embolden has received an upgrade in that at level 92, pressing Embolden grants you Thorned Flourish, which allows you to use a follow-up AoE OGCD damage button called Vice of Thorns. Acceleration has a new effect. This is unlocked via a trait at level 96. Basically, once you accelerate a spell, that'll give you a free usage of a new instant cast GCD called Grand Impact. This GCD replaces Impact and Jolt on your hotbar automatically when it's available. Jolt 2 receives an upgrade to Jolt 3 at level 84 actually. Your AoE melee combo no longer requires 60 mana, now it's just 50 mana like your single target combo. Some nice little upgrades to Red Mage for sure, but I'm curious to see how this will change the overall rotation loop. I'll definitely be playing around with some Red Mage. Summoner is up next, let's take a look. It's Summoner. Yep, you have a new demi summon called Solar Bahamut at level 100, along with special GCDs and an AoE OGCD like normal Bahamut. You can also use Lux Solaris, which is a big AoE raid-wide heal for your party. Between your normal summons of Ifrit, Garuda, and Titan, the order of your demi summons is Solar Bahamut, Bahamut, Solar Bahamut again, then Phoenix. After that, it repeats. Other than that, Searing Light has been slightly adjusted. Now it's a 5% party-wide damage buff for 20 seconds and allows for an AoE OGCD follow-up attack called Searing Flash. Fester upgrades into Necrotize at level 92, basically just an enhanced version. And that's all for Summoner. Like I said, yup, it's Summoner. Moving right along, it's time to take a look at our other ranged friends, Fizz Ranged. Right away, all 3 Fizz Ranged got a trait upgrade, which makes their party mitts, Tactician, Troubadour, Shield Samba, all mitigate 15% damage now instead of just 10%. And, like the melees, Second Wind's potency got increased. Let's start with Machinist, my favorite. So, Barrel Stabilizer got an awesome adjustment. It no longer gives you 50 heat gauge, but instead just gives you a buff which allows for a free usage of Hypercharge. This will be great for avoiding overcapping your gauge. On top of that, at level 100, Barrel Stabilizer also grants you Full Metal Machinist. This buff allows you to execute Full Metal Field. It's probably the coolest looking action in the game in my opinion, and that's coming from a very, very biased Dragoon main. It's awesome. Heat Blast has received an upgrade at level 68 actually, and becomes Blazing Shot. Different animation and more potency. Ricochet and Gauss Round have both received upgrades at level 92. They become Double Check and Checkmate. These are also just different animations with more potency. Chainsaw receives an upgrade at level 96. It will now grant you the ability to follow up with Excavator. This is basically just a second Chainsaw in that it gives 20 battery gauge, but it is now an AoE attack around your target. Boom! Finally, at level 94, Drill/Bioblaster, since their usages are connected, gain an additional charge, so you can have up to 2. I gotta say, it is becoming increasingly difficult every day to not just become a Machinist main. These insanely cool upgrades are definitely making that even more difficult. Next up, let's see what's new with Bard. So, the biggest change, and this is one that I've wanted for a long time, your songs can now be played without a target. However, you still need to be in combat, so no pre-pull memes. But this will be great for managing your songs in longer encounters with multiple phases. Bloodletter receives an upgrade at level 92. It is changed to Heartbreak Shot, which is just a new animation and more potency. Your procs on your single target and AoE GCDs, Refulgent Arrow and Shadow Bite, have been combined into one buff instead of 2 different ones. So you can get a proc from using your single target GCD, then spend the proc on the AoE attack, or vice versa. At level 96, Barrage grants a new buff called Resonant Arrow Ready, which allows for the usage of Resonant Arrow, a big potency GCD which does AoE damage at your target. If you're curious, because it's a bit confusing, you still use your Barrage proc on Refulgent Arrow or Shadow Bite, but you'll be able to press Resonant Arrow afterwards, or before, I guess. Finally, at level 100, Radiant Finale receives a new follow-up action called Radiant Encore, which is a big AoE damage GCD with some falloff that deals more damage the more coda you have. That's about it for the bard changes. I'm a huge fan of the song adjustment, and Resonant Arrow looks super awesome too. And last but not least, let's take a look at Dancer. So Flourish grants a new buff along with what was already given in the past. It's called Finishing Move Ready, which, you guessed it, lets you use Finishing Move. This is basically just standard finish, but it's instant, so no steps required. Executing Finishing Move or Standard Finish allows for a follow-up GCD called Last Dance, a high potency move with some AoE. Tech Step now grants Dance of the Dawn, which is a 50 Esprit gauge spender, which does huge AoE damage at your target. And that's really about it for new stuff on Dancer. Anything else that could have changed is probably just small things that I'm unfamiliar with because I don't really play this job too much. All right, so that's it for the job adjustments. Pretty cool, right? Let me know what you guys think. Next up, I'm going to show you guys a few key moments from one of the new dungeons with no commentary. I was able to do 2 run-throughs, once on Dragoon with fellow attendees, and once again at the end of the day on Viper with duty support. This is your spoiler warning if you'd like to skip away. Now's your last chance. Alright, let's check out the level 91 MSQ dungeon, Ffxiv Kutumu. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. Enjoy!
It's not 1% anymore.
Potion!
0.1.
Yo, let's go. I'm drinking mine.
No, put it on your hotbar, man. We need it.
Oh wait, I have this gap closer now.
Oh yeah. Let me try this AoE thing. It's pretty poggers.
Oh, we're climbing.
Yeah,
Oh, snap.
Yeah, I was exploring this earlier and I was like, oh my god, good climbing animation. Yeah, let's go. I was like, I can't.
Yo, K Kona is here.
Man, he just
Never
doubled
mind.
down, dude. What the?
Whoa, pretty.
Yo, the game looks good.
Yo, slimes. Nice, nice.
What
the slime?
The game looks amazing now.
What? Oh damn.
Whoa.
Lighting.
What
What?
Wait, it's us. Look.
Oh.
Wait, is it really?
Yeah, it's us. They stole our fits. Look
Man,
at this
we're gonna
guy.
come mess this guy up. He's just
Yo,
sleeping,
look at this
dude.
guy.
Drowsy.
Snorlax.
So
No,
cute.
not Snorlax.
You woke
Oh.
him up.
That's the new mug. That's the new mug.
Oh, is that the poison thing?
Kunai
Yeah.
Bane is the new trick, right?
Yeah.
It's only it's only a multi-target, right? There's no single target version, right?
Ask me when we're not doing this, because I'm like Omega.
Right here on me, guys.
Yeah, here's safe.
Wow. Oh shoot.
What the?
Oh wow.
Huh?
You would love.
Oh no. Oh,
What?
oh,
What does this
right here
mean?
on me. Right
It's
here on
sticker,
me.
it's sticker, it's sticker,
Okay.
it's sticker. I think it's just sticker. Yeah. Just sticker.
Don't be in front. It's not
I
a
don't know if
position.
that's AoE or not, but oh god.
What if we just ignored the mechanics?
What if we ignored? Yeah, I was gonna say. Uh-oh, wait. I don't like that. Okay.
Oh, I don't know if we can ignore all that.
And then
Yo,
mug.
can you guys hold damage for a second?
Nope.
Sorry.
Really neat dungeon. I'm surprised how much fun those bosses were actually. I also loved all the scenery. It's the perfect dungeon to show off all the new graphical updates, and this media tour footage actually isn't even the final build, so don't forget that. Now, let's wind down a bit. I'm going to play some footage now of me just exploring around some of the new zones. Tuliolol, the new hub, Kozama Uka, and Urkopacha. Starting off with the new hub area, Tuliolol is a big open city. I imagine these streets get pretty lively, but there's also some really cool quiet spots off in the edges of town. I absolutely love all the hanging lights here. It's so pretty. Went ahead and went over here to take a seat after a long day of recording all this job footage and just took a break. It's super cool to see all the new water effects on this stone path here. And look, alpacas. I'm not exactly sure what this area is, but I think it might be some kind of airship landing. That's pretty cool. I headed back to the heart of town and look, I found a big fish. I'm actually so excited to do more big fishing in Dawntrail. Can't wait. Over here looks like a nice place to grab some tacos and... Wait. Hello, chat. It's the little guy. Look at him. Look at the little guy. Yeah, but these tacos look delicious. I can't even lie. All right, after checking the city out, I went ahead and went to explore Kozama Uka. I love the vibes here, and the aetheryte hubs look super unique. There's plenty of these lookout posts around all these super pretty trees, so I took a break up there on top of one of them to get a look at that awesome looking mountain. I flew down by the water and checked out this neat bridge. Surely, I think there will be a big fish here, and I'll be spending lots of time here. I found myself at another aetheryte and found some new friends, but their houses were closed, so I left. After that, I took a long stroll down this beautiful path. Super pretty. Next up, I headed to another one of the new zones, Urkopacha. This area seems to be a bit more solemn. I think that's the word. The large mountains and open fields led me to some very big grave sites. There's lots of tall mountains here, and following those led me to this really cool secluded cave with some interesting looking murals on the wall. I headed back out to enjoy the scenery and listen to this awesome BGM. I ended up finding a spicy lava friend alongside a large cliff leading to a beautiful sea of clouds. But also, rewind that a little bit, Jill. Did you guys notice the huge claw marks on the side of the mountains? I wonder what did that. After a long day of exploring, I finally found some time to just sit down and relax, before I ran the dungeon one more time, of course. I found a cool view and reflected on my time in Final Fantasy XIV, especially during Endwalker. Endwalker provided me so many new opportunities, new friends, cherished memories, and a conclusion to what has been my absolute favorite storyline in any game I've ever played. I hope this video provided lots of good info for everyone who's excited for Dawntrail. Jill and I worked very hard to make this video the absolute best we could. We appreciate you all for your time, and I hope I'll be able to do this again in the future. Dawntrail is the literal dawn of new beginnings, not just for me, but for all of us. I'm looking forward to learning about new cultures, finding new adventures, making new allies, and of course, making lots of new memories. Thank you to everyone who has been along this journey with me. Thank you to Square Enix for all the wonderful times, and let's all blaze a new trail together in Dawntrail. Bye bye! See you all soon in Tyrol.